Julian Lewis has decommitted from USC, and we need to talk about it. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If you're new to the #1 college football show channel, please consider subscribing. We have more than 117,000 subscribers here, watching segments from the show, watching the live show here. I would really love for you to join the community, join the family, become part of the kinfolk that I'm talking to, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss things like this, which is huge news. 2025 quarterback prospect Julian Lewis out of Carrollton, Georgia, decommitting from USC, a place he had been committed to since August of last year. And the rumblings of what this might look like for a flip commitment to elsewhere began in earnest a couple of months ago. But really, going back to the summer, when it was very clear that Lewis was considering Indiana and Colorado along with his commitment to USC. Now, I don't think that the games that were played yesterday are insignificant in Lewis's decision to decommit from USC. Start with USC. They end up playing a really important game against Nebraska at the Coliseum. They had made a quarterback change from Miller Moss to Jaden Mayava. The difference here is that one of these guys has another year of eligibility left in Miller Moss, and the other guy, Jaden Mayava, was a redshirt freshman. And you could see how the offense changed to something that Lincoln Riley is much more fluid in and good with when it comes to his offense in Jaden Mayava, who is a much more mobile quarterback than Miller Moss. And that proved to be the difference in beating Nebraska in a gotta-have-it situation where you're trying to get to bowl eligibility with wins against perhaps Notre Dame and you hope UCLA this coming weekend. But the thing that I thought was more interesting is on the gotta-have-it downs, you weren't seeing Lincoln Riley hand the ball to Woody Marks, who had a great game, 146 yards on the ground, or him dialing up a play for Zachariah Branch on an end around or a reverse or even a hitch. You saw Jaden Mayava having the opportunity to run the option on fourth and gotta have it, and he makes the right play. He pitches it to the running back who takes it down the field. Quentin Jordan also a godsend for them. And when they got to get into the end zone, it is a guy that was finding his way through the thick of that front seven at Nebraska and getting in there to give them what was the go-ahead touchdown to win. They were leading 21-20, but that score plus the extra point made it 28-20, meaning that Nebraska had to get in the end zone, right? They couldn't win this on a field goal. And that, I think, has to be taken into account because a lot of Julian Lewis's game is RPO-type stuff, and he is not unathletic. He's an athlete back there. The other game that we have to think about is Colorado's beatdown of Utah at Folsom, where they beat Utah 49-24. Now, Utah is not a good football team, but going into this weekend, Utah had the #1 scoring defense in the conference. So putting up a big number against them is meaningful, and that is what they ended up doing, really pouring it on in the fourth quarter, if we're being honest about this. But they jumped out to a 21-6 lead in the first half, right? And that was with the offense not really doing much. Pat Shurmur's play calling is Pat Shurmur's play calling. But when you have Shedeur Sanders and you have Will Shepard and you have Travis Hunter, you have Draylon Miller going for over 100 yards and a breakout performance for himself, and you have Jimmy Horn on the shelf, you're really not going to have to be that dynamic in your play calling. You can really say, hey, what do you want to run? And you give him the ball and let him do what he do with it. He went 30 of 41 for 340 yards with a couple of TDs. He tied the single-season passing TD record at 27. His next one, we think coming against Kansas this weekend, will give him the record. They're off to an 8-2 start. They are #1 in the Big 12 right now with the loss coming to BYU by Kansas late last night. They're in prime position, pun intended, to get to the Big 12 championship and make the college football playoff. They win the next two games, they're in, right? We think that they can get in now, even if some things get wonky. Tiebreakers and stuff are a little weird in the Big 12, but the landscape is the same for Colorado. Win the next two games, right? Beat Kansas, which is a dangerous game for them, and beat Oklahoma State, which can be a dangerous game for them, depending on what Oklahoma State team we get to see, and then win the Big 12 championship. Right now, it's still Colorado, BYU in the Big 12 championship. It's just there's only 3 undefeated teams left in the sport: Indiana, Army, and Oregon. For them to make the college football playoff in year 2 after going 4-8, I don't need to tell you, would be a tremendous win for the Buffs, for Prime, because that's what he wants. That's where he's bet the expectation. When he went to the 2022 national championship game between Georgia and Texas Christian, he was seen on the sideline going, we got to get here. Well, they are 6 wins from getting, they're 5 wins from getting there. There's 6 wins from the national championship. You win the next 5 games you play, you're going to be in the national championship game on January 20th. Ridiculously cool for Colorado. Now, where does Julian Lewis fit into all this? Well, he was going to go to Indiana for a visit for the Michigan game. He decided not to go to that. He had previously visited Colorado. And after that, there's rumblings about, hey, is he looking to flip his commitment? And when you look at Shedeur Sanders going into the NFL next year, it is done. He's gone. He's not even enrolled in classes. And you look at the other players that are going to be coming back, particularly at wide receiver, right? You're going to lose Travis Hunter, but okay, you're going to have people to throw the rock to, and you can go into the portal, and you know that Prime can get you anybody you want from a skill position standpoint into the portal, and it's a ready-made spot for you to walk in there and start right away, whereas at SC, it looks like Jaden Maiava or even Miller Moss or even a transfer quarterback might be the way to go. I think with a flip commitment, if it were to happen, that would be at the top of the list, because when I talk to players, especially at the top of the game, who talk about where they're going to go, they always look at the depth chart. They look at how deep is the competition there. Now, we can say all these things about, wanting to compete or not wanting to compete, but if there just aren't that many spots available for you to compete, to win, you're not willing to sit and wait. Like, not everybody wants to be Arch Manning. I get that. My favorite example of this is before the portal and before name, image, and likeness and before immediate eligibility. Samaje Perine. I saw him at a Rivals camp years ago, and he's an enormous man. Like, he's been the size that he is in the NFL basically since he was 14 years old. And I asked him, you could go to Alabama, you could go to LSU, you could go anywhere. He's from Pflugerville, Texas. And I said, why'd you go to Oklahoma? And he said, it's got the fewest amount of running backs. Hello, right? Jamar Chase flipped like 8 times, or so it felt, right? For where he was going to go to where he was going to go. And one of the things he kept looking at Florida was, I don't know, man, depth chart over there looked kind of deep, right? Looked at LSU, I think I could play. Turns out to be one of the best wide receivers to ever play the game and is in the running to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as quickly as he's going to get into the College Football Hall of Fame with the numbers that he's been able to put up with the Cincinnati Bengals. But I wanted to get out here and talk really quickly about Julian Lewis and how I do believe, I'm not Steve Wiltfong. Wiltfong got this on lock. But all of the tea leaves and all of the data that we have points to perhaps a commitment to Colorado, and that would be great for them. And this is what winning does, right? Winning at Colorado makes this an easier sell, right? I think that getting a flip commitment for Julian Lewis from USC is a bigger deal than LSU being able to hold on to what they got in Bryce Underwood. If Michigan would have been able to pull that Bryce Underwood thing off, huge deal. But right now, this might be the most pivotal recruiting battle in the sport today. And wouldn't you know it, it's going Coach Prime's way.